This is First Encounter, a podcast exploring both the foundations and the future of historical romance. Hello, everyone, and welcome to First Encounter. I am Andie James, a historical romance enthusiast and author, and I am really excited because today I am joined by my friend Jane Hadley. Jane and I first met, I don't know how long ago it was, but we're in a common author group of other historical romance authors, which is really fun because we just like to chat and support each other and share knowledge and all that. So we're in that group together, and I feel like that's kind of how I first got to know you. And then at the beginning of this year, Jane lives in Minnesota, specifically in the Twin Cities area, and things kind of exploded. And she had the wonderful idea to try to raise awareness and funds and do things to help the Minneapolis and greater community as they were struggling with kind of the occupation by ICE and all that involved. And so she asked if anyone wanted to help her. And so I did. So
we're a huge help. We're an enormous help.
Yeah, but with our friend Louise, shout out Louise, we love you. Organized very quickly and did the Romance for Minnesota fundraiser, and were absolutely overwhelmed by how people responded. I mean, we raised close to $29,000 in 6 days, and that's thanks to the romance community. So shout out to all of you. But through that process and just coordinating, I feel like got to know Jane a lot better.
Yes.
And she's a wonderful person.
Yes, we're best friends now. We're trauma bonded for life.
Trauma bonded. Yeah. Yes, that's sadly true, though. But yeah, so anyways, I'm very excited that Jane is our guest today and to have her here with us. She just released her 5th, I guess, book. Yes. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. It was a couple weeks ago. It came out very end of April. It's called Mr. Milner Gets Divorced, and it is a treat. I so enjoyed reading this book. I devoured it right after it came out. So much fun. Mid-century, it's 54 in the book, but so much fun. Winter Carnival in Minneapolis. So great. romance, married man struggling with identity, reconnecting with an old flame that was he a flame? Was he not? We don't know because he's confused. Anyways, it's great. Let me properly introduce Jane a little bit and then we can get into it. So Jane Hadley is a lifelong student of history and writer of kissing books, which we love. She lives under 7 layers of blankets, staring out into the cold tundra of Minnesota winter from behind her original wavy glass of 1915 windows, which she stubbornly won't replace because old things are inherently valuable. And I think that statement says so much about you. I love that. Old things are inherently valuable. And I should also say that Jane is one of the most creative authors I know because she also does artwork for her books. She's done all her covers. She has a duo books, The Secret Soldier, which we'll talk about more as well. But she released those kind of as a serial and periodical style and had illustrations to go with that. And she does all that herself. And I find that amazing because I do not have any kind of visual drawing artistic. I don't possess that. So I am envious and I love that. Jane, let's hear from you a little bit. I want to know before we dive into your books and all of this, why do you write what you write? How did you get into historical romance? When did all this start for you?
Oh, yes. I love history. Like I've been a student of history all my life, sometimes in spite of myself or, because I didn't want to, but I did anyway. But I find history just endlessly fascinating. And I think I'm a student of history because I am a student of people and I really love people. I describe myself as serially extroverted and I want to understand them. And I find that time, as does location, that you can travel around the world and meet people from all sorts of different cultures and then start to see what you have in common and what is actually just culture. and then what brings us together and makes us human. And I think time and the study of history can do the same thing, because people from other time periods have different cultures.
Yes.
Right? And they come from different cultures and they do things completely differently, and they have really weird jokes that you can't understand because
Yes.
you're not from there. You don't get it, right?
You don't know that context.
I really love history because I love people and I want to understand
Yeah.
and be a student of what makes us human, what brings us together, and what connects us. And I find history an endless well to dig for that kind of information. So I do history in my day job. I used to be a social studies teacher, and it's like a lifestyle, really. But a lot of times I would find I'd learn all these really cool stories. And, fall down all these historical rabbit holes and primary source holes. And I get really excited and I want to tell these stories, but I want to tell them in a way that is rooted less in nonfiction and fact and more of like heart. And I found that I just felt much more comfortable working with that material in a fiction format than a nonfiction format. That's like academic and really
I love it. I love it.
And also, I don't know.
Yeah.
Narrative nonfiction is cool, and I would love to master that someday, but I have not mastered that. Not yet. So
That's okay, because we like it in the form of kissing books. So
I also just need the kissing to keep my attention, because as much as I love history, I am really deeply disengaged by the way that nonfiction history is written and find it really dry and hard to get into. But I will read it if I have a plan. If I have some characters in my head that I'm interested in doing in learning more about, then I will devour nonfiction books. So maybe this is all just an elaborate ruse to trick my brain into reading nonfiction.
Maybe. I don't know. Well, I love what you said. It's that human connection piece though, right? Like it's through fictionalized story, we can understand this history better because we're able to connect to it through that very human character lens. Like there's a way that we can emotionally connect with and understand in a way that you may not if you're just reading, like, this is what happened, because you're kind of experiencing and living it through someone else. I don't know if that.
And I think that I'm processing a lot of the things that I've learned by writing about it through the lens of fictional characters.
Yeah. And your books are so rich in that detail in such a natural way. Like, I don't read your book and think like, oh, all this history I'm learning, and it doesn't feel like this lesson shoved down my throat.
Oh, good.
But there's so much in there. And I like just read Mr. Milner. You do such a good job. I mean, you mentioned like the jokes and things, and you're very immersed as you're reading in this world, like the lingo that they use and the references they have. It's so appropriate to that time period. And you do such a good job of like laying it out there that I was never like, what does that mean? Like, I could understand it and it felt natural to the flow of the conversation between the characters. And you do that excellently. I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. I was really inspired for that book by a memoir that I read called The Evening Crowd at Kermsers by Ricardo J. Brown. And he was a gay man in he was a young adult in the 1940s. He enlisted in World War II. And then I think he was a sailor. I think he was in the Navy, which makes sense. This tracks. But he was like, eventually he just sort of lost it and just went into his commanding officer's office, or went to his commanding officer and was like, I'm gay. And they were like, oh, you can't tell us
Don't say that. Don't tell us that.
Tell us that. And he's like, yeah, I am. So he was dishonorably discharged. And it was very strange. So he writes about that, and he writes about his experience in the army, but the core of the book is about him after the war, post-war. So like late 1940s, early 1950s bar that he and all his friends hung out at. And he writes these incredibly beautiful profiles of all of these people. He's very snotty. He's really like acerbic, right, about his descriptions. But I find his writing really inspiring. So it was a really beautiful memoir. It's sort of a treasure trove of early St. Paul gay culture, which you don't really find very often for like smaller Midwest cities or small Midwest towns. It's sort of like
Yeah.
buried. But this book, he just laid it all out. And he did an incredible job of embodying what it was like
Mhm.
and helping me, like making me feel like I was there. I just consumed this book. It was so good. And it was a huge inspiration.
Yeah.
And I wanted
I
to
see
share
that.
those stories with other people. And kind of the other thing that I wanted to do is sort of give him a happy ending.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that in this book because you do. I mean, I talked about the time setting, but it's also very much, it's immersed in its place. Like it is very much St. Paul. Like you talk about specific cultural festivals and events and locations and things that are very specific to where you live, to where this story takes place. And I think that is really cool because I don't know. I mean, I live on the West Coast. I live in the Portland, Oregon area. I spent a lot of my life in the Seattle area. I don't know Midwest, right? But it was fun. It was really fun. And you do that really well. And I also, you mentioned that, part of the book is the memoir is him hanging out at a bar with his friends, which half this book, maybe not half, maybe that's an exaggeration,
No,
but yeah, like half this
probably
book
half.
takes place at their bar where they hit Kruger's, where they hang out. And it's, quite the cast of character of friends as well. So we have Joe Milner's kind of the new guy into this group. He's the man getting a divorce and figuring out who he is, Mr. Milner of the title. But then Stephen is the other part of our pair. And he is who is already part of this community in this world. And we get to meet everyone through. But it's so fun and the characters are so great. And, you've done a great job posting on social media about this book and kind of giving us visuals from cinema of the era. I love it. You've cast these people. It's
I
great.
have.
Uh, but there's a character that you were like, I love this character so much. And it's Mae West, who can you talk a little bit about Mae West and how you came up with this whole crew?
Yes. One of the things that I really wanted to do that I feel like sometimes, especially in historical queer stories, you don't really get the
Mhm.
sense of like a queer community that you would
Yeah.
expect or that you would maybe imagine you would get in a contemporary novel. Because I think there's these preconceived notions that because we don't have a lot of documentation about queer people in the past, that like were they like hidden and separated? And I mean, I think, yes, sometimes they were, but sometimes they weren't. And they
Mhm.
were just they lived very privately and didn't, tell a lot of people about it. This whole community existed, like this bar and this community existed, and nobody ever knew about it if
Yeah.
Ricardo Brown hadn't written his memoir about it, right? Because everybody who went there was like,
Yeah.
cone of silence, we're just keeping
Yeah.
it on the DL.
We know this is us, but yeah.
So I wanted to kind of create this this group of friends that showed a lot of different
Mhm.
ways that people's queer identities are manifested. So, some of them are really, some of them are in monogamous relationships, some of them are not in monogamous relationships. And they love
Frank
it that
Atlas,
way.
anyone?
And Mae West is one of them. And
Yes.
if you've read any of my books, I love a little bit of gender fuckery. Like, I love to play with gender. This is something that I have a complicated relationship with gender for myself, and I have a really fun time pushing against gender roles and gender expectations. And Mae West absolutely does this. He does
Mhm.
drag. He is very, I don't know, like to use the Andy Warholism, swishy. He's very swishy. He's very flamboyant, and he's loud as hell.
Mhm.
And I have several, I have a few swishy, loud friends that I love and have an amazing time with. And so, I wanted to write a character who embodied them and
Mhm.
was inspired by them and who inspire me, right? So
Yeah.
I love Mae
Yeah.
West. And sometimes I mess up his pronouns. Like when I was writing, you might
Yeah.
find one if you read this book. You might be like, "Oops, oops, you used the wrong pronoun for Mae West." Okay, so
Yeah. He's very
he
fun.
is. He's
Very
very
fun.
fun, and I love him. He's my gentle
Yeah.
favorite, and the epilogue was maybe for him more than Joe and Stephen.
I can see that. I can see that. But so this book though is actually it's a follow-up, I guess,
Yeah.
to your first book, Mrs. Milner Gets a Kitchen. Um And even though it takes place beforehand, this is events that happen about a year and a half, 2 years prior to Mrs. Milner Gets a Catch In. But I was curious if you had this idea for Mr. Milner's book and his story before you wrote Mrs. Milner, because that book's really focused on her. Joe's mentioned in it as her ex-husband, but he's not really a character. He's not really on, I don't know if he's even on page.
He's not.
But there's like, I recently read this again in prep for Mr. Milner. And so there's just one moment where you mention Joe and Stephen. And so I was like, did she already know or did this come after? And this is just my writing brain being curious.
I did already know. Like, I knew why they got divorced. And I knew Joe fairly well. Like, I understood him. Like, he was a very passive he's a very passive person. He's very like not emotionally intelligent and very, closed off and has a lot of walls up, which is why their marriage failed, because Marion is just like a motor mouth and just all of her inside thoughts.
She's very effusive.
Yes. Yeah. So I kind of knew like that was what I knew why their marriage failed. I didn't know Stephen though. I didn't know him at all until I read The Evening Crowd at Kermsers. And when I read that book, I was like, this is happening. This is happening. I'm so excited.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no, that's great. Because I was wondering, I was like, how much of this did she already figured out? Did she know she was going to write this like sequel, prequel? Like, because you allude to the fact in Mrs. Milner that part of the reason their marriage failed is because he's gay. Like I say, at one point you mentioned.
Yeah, he cheated on her. For sure. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. But you don't really say that because, again, you don't full out come out and say that. You allude to it, but you don't, it's not crystal clear because, again, of the time in which they live and what is and is not okay to share. And so I was just like, interesting. I wonder how much Jane had figured out. So I love that it's kind of both, right? Like, you knew who Joe was. You knew that's why their marriage failed. Well, part of the reason. I mean, again, it was partially personality and all that. But, but I like that story kind of really solidified for you later.
Yeah, it did. It did. I didn't have it all figured out. There's a lot of stuff in my books that seems like, wow, it all came together. And I'm like, that was random.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
That was a win.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of writing a long family series, and there's some things that you're like, oh, I can make that connect, like randomly as you're writing when you didn't plan it necessarily. I don't know. That's fun. And Mrs. Milner was your first book, and it was very fun because it was like when it came out, it was this kind of refreshing, again, this 50s set American Midwest story that it just feels very different. And one of your other books, I've mentioned this in previous episodes of the podcast when I'm talking with authors, but one of my favorite questions to ask authors is, do you have a book that you wish more people would read or talk about and why? And you mentioned kind of your middle book, I guess, I don't know, in terms of release, Oh, You Pretty Things. And this book takes place in the 70s in also Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it feels pretty different. And some people might argue it's not historical romance.
Some people have argued it's not historical
romance. Some people have argued that because it's closer. I mean, it's 50 years ago.
It is 50 years
it's certainly
ago.
Not,
and
it's not contemporary.
I'm really young and cool, so like I wasn't doing that.
Yeah. No, I will date myself here, which is fine. I don't care. I'm 42 people. It's great. I'm embracing my 40s. But I was born in 1984. And so like anything before that, really, it's like if I don't have life experience or understanding of it, like, I think that can be classified as historical, but it's still a little weird. I don't know. Like, I think it can be classified that, but my brain sometimes, if it's not more than like 100 years old, like World War I era, my brain still sometimes has to
It's weird.
compute
'Cause it's like,
Yeah.
I know people who lived through that, and that feels not
Mhm.
historical because I know them and they were
Right.
there, or I
Living
was
memory.
there and that was my life, like, that doesn't feel historical.
Yeah.
The 1990s doesn't feel historical to me, but at the same juncture, I could absolutely write a historical romance set in the 1990s. I think I could,
I know.
because I think it's just it's long enough. I think as long as you have maybe, like, 20 years of perspective, you can start to understand a world in a historical context, and
Mhm.
understand the sorts of I don't know, the zeitgeist or whatever of that period because you have enough hindsight to be able to
Mhm.
do that. And I think in my world, having, taught people, like taught young people who, were born well after 9/11,
Mhm.
to that felt historical to them because it was completely outside of their experience, right? And they
Mhm.
understand the post 9/11 world, but they don't understand having gone through that. Similarly, like, my
Yeah.
kids were really, really little during 2020, so that will feel historical to them in a way that it
Yeah.
doesn't to me.
Right. Right.
But I don't know, at the same juncture, when you're teaching a history class, you have to, bring it up to the present and try and make
Yeah.
connections to the present. And so
Yeah.
I think history and what can be made into a historical romance is a really broad category, but I just think that I don't know, and I don't know where this comes from. Maybe it comes from just like publishing trends and what they thought these are the
Mhm.
things that people expect from historical
Yeah.
romance. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
what, we've come to expect from historical romance because
Right.
it's like that weird feed cycle.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I think when you say historical romance, people have a really specific idea. It's like, it's the bodices are
Yes.
being ripped, perhaps. I don't know. Fabio's on the cover. Like, that's always what I
Mhm.
thought a historical romance book was. And I
And I
just
think that's
figured, there's a lot of places and time periods that we could be exploring here
yes.
that I think would be really
Yeah.
fun. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think most people's brain automatically goes to that, like, 18th century England bodice ripper Fabio place, but that we need to expand beyond that. And we are expanding beyond that. And I think your books all do that in different ways. Partially the time and setting, like we talked about, partially also whose love stories you're telling. Like you said, you do a great job exploring different dynamics of gender and how that affects who we are, how that affects our sexuality, who we love, all of that. And so I think your books are pretty unique and I love them. Um, but maybe they shouldn't be so unique. I don't know. It's interesting because, like, when I think of like, oh, you pretty things, the books that come to mind as comparisons are more like Taylor Jenkins Reid,
Yeah.
like in terms of like time period and what she's doing with, it does feel historical, like, Daisy Jones and the Six and Atmosphere, but it's more recent history. But you guys both do a good job of setting up this feels very different from our current life.
Yeah.
There are people who live through this who have living memory of this period still, but it's very different from our day-to-day life right now.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting to explore the types of choices that people felt like they had and the words that they had to describe
Mhm.
themselves. I think, 1970 was really interesting to write about because the gender binary is really binary.
Yeah.
In terms of, and there are a lot of people who are pushing against that or maybe struggling against that, but they have completely
Mhm.
different words to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I really wanted to show was what I really like about 1970 in Minneapolis in particular is the University of Minnesota had a queer student group called FREE, which
Mhm.
stands for Fight Repression of Erotic Expression. Oh,
Love that.
so clever. And it started because a couple of students got together and they were doing like a teach-in sort of thing or teach. I don't care. I can't remember what they called it, but they were at a cafe and they were teaching about like
Mhm.
homosexuality because it's not something that they
Mhm.
were able to learn about in their school, and that's
Right.
that's very late 1960s, early 1970s of them, right?
Yeah.
To do. They're like, why can't we learn about this? Let's teach it to each other.
Let's
Um,
teach it to each other. Yeah.
yeah, and so the group was founded by Stephen Ehrig and Corrine Phelps, and I find Corinne Phelps a really interesting person because she had grown up in the suburbs and she had been forced to undergo shock treatment because of her sexuality, and her parents had chosen shock treatment to treat her. So she had a lot of trauma. And the other thing I love
Yeah.
about Free is that it's just a hot mess. It's constantly like
Free. I
leadership
love
is
it.
constantly changing, and they're like, we should maybe not have it stand for fight repression of erotic expression. That's gonna freak people out. And the other group is like, good,
It should freak them out. Yeah.
we want that. And the other group is like, maybe let's tone it down a little bit so we can be more, digestible. And they're like, no, it's so good. They're just constantly fighting with each other. So that was the like historical setting that I chose. And then the other thing was that I really wanted to read a book that made me feel the way the movie Velvet Goldmine made me feel when I was like 15 years old. And so I was like, I'm gonna make it glam rock. We're gonna do glam rock. Was there
Love it.
glam rock in Minneapolis?
The whole
Not
vibe
really,
of
no.
that book to me is Bowie.
Yeah, I just
Like,
really
that
wanted
is
to do Bowie.
yeah,
I went through a whole Bowie phase. Like, I have a bunch.
it's
I
great.
mean, like, I went full. Like, that was my whole personality when I was writing that book. I was like, um,
I love it.
and I think that I really love that book because there's a character in it. It's just a love triangle book. That's the other thing that I keep writing love triangles, Andie. I don't understand why. All right,
It's okay.
welcome to my public therapy session, everybody. I don't know what love triangles
It's
are
okay.
about, but
It's
they
okay.
keep happening.
Yeah. No, I'm friends with Lindsay Barrett. Her first book was very much a love triangle, and she was just like, "This is so hard to write.
It's so
Why
hard
am I
to
doing
write.
this?"
And also I get anxious because I'm like, people hate love triangles. They like famously hate love triangles,
But they
but they
don't. Like,
don't.
look at every single like popular teen drama of like the early 2000s, and they're all love
I think that's
triangles,
why
and
people
everyone
hate
eats
love
it up.
triangles. They got sick of them, right? So I don't know. I always root for the wrong one
But how do you know it's the wrong
because it's
one?
not the one she ends up with at the end. I'm always like, what's wrong with you? You chose badly. I disagree with your
Goodness.
choice.
Yeah.
Obviously,
But
this
love
other
triangles.
person.
Anyways, we digress. But it's great.
Yeah.
No, I love it. You just push the boundaries, but your books are still, I would argue, very much contain the elements of what I think makes historical romance. And you illustrate that well. And I just last week released a bonus episode where I talked with Olivia from Instagram. Not the Olivia is her handle, how many people know her, but she does a great job of being able to really kind of define in a way I cannot, like what makes historical romance kind of a distinct genre within romance. And a big part of it is the social constraints of the time and what's accepted and what's not. And your books exemplify that beautifully.
Oh, thank you. I think
And
I think
yearning.
you're
Always
totally
lots of
right.
yearning.
It is the yearning. That might be the root of the love
Yeah.
triangle too. Like I love unrequited love.
Yeah.
I find it very fun in a bad way. I don't know. If you've ever been in
No.
unrequited love, it's torture, but like I don't know. I
One
love
of
it.
my favorite movie lines of all time. I mean, this is me and my rom-com love, but in the movie The Holiday, if anyone's seen that, I mean, total schmaltz, but I love it.
No one's
But
seen
Kate
that
Winslet's
movie. It's so
character,
obscure.
again, love that movie so much. But Kate Winslet at the beginning is narrating like, oh, how she loves love and all these different kinds of love. And she's like, and then there's the worst kind of love, unrequited love. And I'm just like, yup.
Yes.
Anyways,
It
I
sucks.
digress
But it's
again.
also awesome. I don't understand. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, because I think you're right. Like, there's these constraints, these social constraints, but
mhm.
I would argue that there are there are just as many contemporary social constraints.
There are.
Often, I don't feel like they're tackled in contemporary romance in the same way. Like, I mean, there's like workplace dramas where it's like, oh, you're not supposed to get together, but like you can, it's fine.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of
Plus
social.
HR.
Yeah, I think we have. I don't know. This is maybe one of my soapboxes that I get on all the time, but I think that historic like history our kind of story American progress is the narrative that we're often fed, and is the one that kind of generally people are like, oh yeah, familiar with, this story of American progress. And we see it everywhere in our contemporary lives, right? When new
Mhm.
technology comes out, everybody's like, we gotta
Right.
do it. It's inevitable. It's progress. It's like, no, it's not. It's
AI.
a choice.
Yeah.
Choice
No,
that
it's
we could
not.
make, and we could choose not to if we
Yeah.
decided that we don't want to. We don't have to do it. It's a choice.
Yeah.
But I think that that fallacy sort of makes this feel like, oh, in a contemporary romance, you don't have these social constraints. And it's not so
Mhm.
much that they aren't there. It's just that we're not maybe aware of them because we see them as
Yeah.
normal, or
Yeah.
they're taboo and we can't talk about them
Mhm.
because it's now.
No, I
But we can go back into
think
historical time periods and identify those things and talk about
yes.
them, and we can use them as analog sort of ways to talk about
Mhm.
some of the constraints that we feel in contemporary times, which I would argue we feel a lot of.
Yes, like, beautifully said, because I think we do have all those same kind of constraints, but we don't necessarily recognize or feel them because, like you said, we're just living it day to day as our norm.
Mm.
History can look on it in hindsight and see how it's changed, but it hasn't changed for us yet, right? And so we can't recognize it as much. But that's what I think, when we talk about sometimes that historical romance, yes, it should be rooted in some historical actuality, but it's still fantasy, right? And I think for me, it's that element of even though it's more realistic, it's the same as like reading a fantasy or a sci-fi book in the sense that it presents a different context. And so when you're applying rules or norms that maybe are very similar to today, you see them in that different
Hmm.
context and can recognize that maybe they're kind of ridiculous
Yeah.
or shouldn't be that way and so I think it's very similar in historical romance by creating the historical context. Even though these books may feel more realistic to our everyday experience, it's still that remove.
Hmm.
I don't know if anything I just said makes any
Yes,
sense, but
I agree with you. I think that I think historical romance can do some things that speculative fiction can't, in that. And there's a lot of historical romance that's sort of just kind of like, sure, whatever. This didn't happen historically, but we're going to go for it. We're going to go with it. It's
right,
fine. Right? We want to create this alternate universe where this things happen differently, or I'm going to make this little town that didn't actually exist, right? So that
right.
I can have some more freedom to control how things happen, right? I'm not that writer. I'm like, what was the weather like that day? Oh, it was
Yes.
raining? That's very useful. Thank you, history. Oh, New Ulm was founded by gymnasts. I guess he's a gymnast now. I like the challenge of that, and I find it very fun.
I love it.
But I also really think it's interesting, especially like the really weird shit. There's so much weird shit. Like history, you can't make this stuff up, you know?
Uh-uh. Yeah.
So, um, I really like that stuff because I think it subverts or pushes against our
Mhm.
expectation of what life
Yeah.
was like. In back then, right, in the
Mhm.
1950s, what was life like? Oh yeah, gay people weren't allowed to exist, but they did, and they were
They
living and
did.
loving and
They've
having
always existed.
fun
Yeah.
at a bar together, right?
Mhm.
I wanted one of the things that I'm really deeply interested in right now is mid 19th century cults,
I love
and
that.
I don't
I
understand.
love that for you.
Yeah, well, like cults and like utopian communities, I find them fascinating because some of them are really sexually liberated.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think there's lots of extreme people who were thinking about things in an extreme way. And just because they weren't the ones in power making choices, and so the things that they were advocating for didn't happen, doesn't mean that they weren't talking about them, thinking about them, or trying to make them happen. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, I'm just deeply interested in the Oneida colony right now, and I really want to write an unstarching romance where the main male character is a Grammite, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta eat these like special breads to suppress my sexual urges." The main female character is like, I have previously been living at the Oneida colony where we had complex marriage, so I could basically have sex with whoever I wanted. So this is weird.
I'm looking forward to this book now. I'm just telling you that right
That's all I
now.
have
I
so
think
far.
it's
It's
great.
just mostly a whim.
Yeah.
Who knows? It might not ever turn
No,
into
it's
anything.
great.
But I'm just
I love you going down these little historical rabbit holes. I there I think it was the Fated Mates Trailblazer episode where she talked with KJ Charles. Anyways, KJ Charles is who I want to talk about for a second. And I think where I heard this snippet from her is the Fated Mates Trailblazer episode where they talked with her. But she talked about how within historical fiction, but historical romance is what we were talking about, right? There's a spectrum of like how specific you are in terms of your historical reference. And I feel like you're kind of more on the extreme end, and we love that about you. And then there's the other side where it's like it's just kind of like this vague background setting, and which I think sometimes maybe some of the complaints about everyone writing Regency, there's enough general cultural knowledge of that period through, I would say more through all the like Austen adaptations and things
Yeah.
rather than actual books. But, people kind of have this general accepted idea of what that time was like, whether or not it's actually truly accurate. I don't know, but we have this cultural idea of what that time was. And so for me as a writer starting out, like that was a very comfortable place to step in because I didn't have to be as precise or detailed with my research because people kind of get it right. And so I don't know, but I still really care about being accurate and having references and, referring to things that happened at the time. So I think I'm kind of like more on the fantasy side, but closer to the middle. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting, but there is this broad spectrum. But I love that your brain is like, I need to get into the nitty gritty. And like, that's where your inspiration starts,
Yeah.
right? Like you start by reading the history and then you come up with the stories. Is that accurate?
Yes, I usually choose setting first, or I
Mm-hmm.
learned some sort of historical fact, like Sylvester Graham thought that if you ate his very specific bread recipe, you would stop having wet dreams. That's crazy. I love it. It's so, like, I don't know. Most of my books are like, this is a weird fact that is so funny. I need to write about it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I have a lot of,
Well,
books in
let's
progress.
talk a little bit about Secret Soldier. So this is a 2-book series. I don't know, duo of books. They go together.
Yeah, it was my first book, and it was my objective was, what if I wrote a book, but instead of sacrificing historical accuracy for plot, I sacrificed plot for historical accuracy.
You're so cute. But these books take place during the Civil War, and we have kind of your play with gender identity in this because one of the main characters is posing as is woman posing as a soldier. Um, and then there's all kinds of, is it weird that I'm having feelings for my friend who I think is a man? And how is this all, anyway. But it's great. And it's secret relationships and Civil War and all this stuff. How did that come about? I mean, yes, the history, but like, where did this come from? And how did you decide? Talk us through a little bit about how you released these, how you wrote
Yes.
these, and why you wanted to do that, because it's very unique and special.
Thank you very much. I had read about women who dressed as men and fought in the Civil War. There's over 300 documented accounts of women who did this, and some of them had been living as men prior to enlistment, and some of them specifically dressed as men in order to enlist. And they did this on both sides of the Civil War, both in the North and the South. And some of them were like writing letters back to their family and kind of, telling all a little bit. And others, it was deeply secretive and nobody ever knew about it until they died. So I basically was learning about this and was like, why is this not a romance novel? Because this would make a great kissing book.
Talk about stakes.
Oh my gosh, like so fun. And I also was really interested in trying to figure out, like, how does this work? Like on a day-to-day basis. Like, how do you have your period? How do you go to the bathroom?
How do you pull that off? Yeah.
I was over at the historic Fort Snelling site, like following the tour guide around being like, where's the toilets? Okay, but these are the officer toilets. Where did the regular people go to the toilet? I need to know about the toilets. Very specific.
Yeah.
Where were they? They were on scaffolds out like hundreds of feet above the river bluff, like on the bluff, and just free fall, human waste, just down the side of the hill. Can't make this stuff up. Can't make it up.
Can't make it
No,
up.
it's just real. Just true. That's what they did. Gross.
I love it.
these books are gross, but in a fun way.
In a fun way.
They're unclean in a fun way. So a few years ago, oh God, this is probably a decade ago now, I did like a little book club thing where we read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins in its original serialized format. That book is bonkers. It's like, it's first person, it's third person. It's whatever. No rules. It was fun.
Why not?
And they had
Why
these
not?
great illustrated plates that went with every issue. And so I was inspired as I was writing the Secret Soldier duology, and as I had to admit that it was 2 books and not 1 book because things had gotten out of hand. And also, like, Charlie refused to admit any of her feelings, which was very frustrating. I was like, "Can you please?" She's like, "No."
Not yet.
So, I love ladies magazines. Like, this is a Godey's Ladies book from 1959. You know, this is what they looked like. And so I wanted to make something like this. I love magazines. And I wanted to figure out, in my heart of hearts, I wanted this to be like mail me a check and I'll send you this thing. But that wasn't that wasn't efficient. So I made this, you know, sort of
I love it
spin-off
so much.
of Godey's
I love
Ladies
it
book.
so much.
And so I largely serialized the story, and that's the bulk of what this is. But in the back, I put in, you know, footnotes because I had a lot of footnotes. I did an enormous amount of research for these books to the point that I have not done that kind of research for a book since. It was my first book. It got out of hand. So I had all these footnotes about what was real and what was rooted in history and what was
Right.
I always want to know that. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm always at the author's note at the back being like, what's real? Oh, what can I take away from it? So I footnoted it so you could literally see this was real. This was real as you're reading, which was fun. And I thought, I'm not going to put that in the actual final print version, but I want it somewhere. So, serial. And then there's all these riddles and recipes and poems and things that I pulled directly from different issues of Godey's Ladies book. And I found so many cool things that made me feel sort of connected with women in the past. The way that women talked about themselves was really interesting. The way that we talk about food and domesticity, the ways that the different kind of pressure or roles that you see in a women's magazine today and like a women's magazine back then. It was just endlessly fascinating, and I wanted to share that with people. And maybe it was really interesting, or maybe it was like, okay, I don't know. Why are you giving me hair oil recipes? I'm like, because it's the same. It's the same stuff. We use the same thing. We need to know this. You're connected.
No, I love that you did it that way. I think it's so unique and fun and just great. And the books that you can buy the books as a whole now, right? Not in the serial anymore. They're packaged together, but your illustrations are still in there. Your plates.
Yes, my illustrated plates are still in there.
Yes, which I love. So you don't get like the full issue with all the extra stuff as well, but now, correct me if I'm wrong, you did the illustrations, I think, kind of along the way, but you had written the book first and then you broke them into pieces?
I did, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I could do the like week to week. I know there's authors that do that. They'll have like a Substack or a Patreon and people subscribe and they release content weekly. And I just, the pressure of that.
I knew I wouldn't have the time to write as I went.
Yeah.
I knew I would just blow up my schedule if I did that.
Yeah,
it needed to be
that's
done
hard.
first. And I think serials that do that, and a lot of mid-19th century serials did do that. They would just write week to week.
Yeah.
And then when you read them in their full version, they're like weird and episodic and
kind of disjointed.
There's a lot of plot holes.
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting about it is that there's an interaction between the author and the readers as you go. And I've read other books that like contemporary or published contemporarily where you can tell as you're reading it that like, okay, I can see there's an interaction here. Things are shifting from where I thought they were going to go because I think the author is interacting with their readers and seeing what those readers are seeing. And then, you know, that's a conversation. I don't know that I'm ready to be in conversation or to be that like open to kind of like
Yeah, I would
creating
imagine.
what people, I don't know, creating other
Getting
people's
that
vision or like
real-time feedback.
collaboratively write, like it's a kind of a
Yeah.
collaborative writing thing. And most of what I do a lot of collaborative writing in my day job. I don't want to do I don't want to do that.
I don't
I
wanna
don't
do
want
that on my own. Yeah. No, it's really interesting because when you think about, like, that's how Dickens
to.
wrote, and other people that we know and are famous, but he's the one that first comes to mind because he infamously wrote that way. Um, but I think it makes sense when you read his books, like, there's such a large cast of characters, and like you said, it's almost a little more episodic sometimes. You're telling these side stories because the way I think of it is like TV series today, right?
Yes, it
It's
is.
like you need an arc for each episode of that television, even if you're telling an overall arc. Whereas I think the way we mainly right now is just that overall arc. Like you may have, a few side stories here and there or threads running along for side characters, but you're not like telling that entire side story in one little chunk. It's running throughout, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just a different way to think about it,
Yeah.
like in arcs and how those
It
work,
makes me think
the
about the
storytelling.
Heated Rivalry TV show and how it took multiple
Yeah.
books from the series and
Yes.
sort of wove them together, and I think they're gonna do that even more in the 2nd season, and I'm so curious how that's gonna work, and I really like that because I don't like I don't generally enjoy adaptations that are just, like, exactly what it was. I'm like, "I already read that, I don't need
Right.
to see it. Do something
Yeah.
interesting."
You have to, yeah, when you change mediums, like there's certain things that you have to change. And I remember I I feel lucky. It was fun. Just I got to see Julia Quinn. She was at the Tacoma Book Fair where I lived last year speaking, and she was talking about how she basically just agreed to let them when they purchased Bridgerton, she just let them take it. And she was like, she doesn't really have they run stuff by her and she consults, but she doesn't have creative control. She let that go. And I was just like, "Oh, I don't know if I'd be able to do." I mean, first of all, no one's buying my books, let's be real. But, um,
I know, same.
I was just like, I just the author in me and maybe it's because I self-published and I'm so used to having control of every aspect, like, I've never surrendered my book to a publishing house, right?
I don't want to, but
I
I'm a
know, I
control freak.
know.
I'm doing this for me.
Yeah,
I don't want any
right, I
I don't
know.
want any feedback,
And
thank
so I'm
you.
like, "God, how can you do that?" But she explained that her family had a background in Hollywood. Like
Oh.
she had people who had worked as script writers and were involved in that world and she understood how it worked and she knew that it would have to be adapted to work in that different medium in that different format and I was just like good on you. Good on you that you
Braver
can
than
like
me.
let it go like that. Like braver than me too, but you have to adapt it and change it to make it work. And you're right, you want to pull out different things. I was just talking, like I said, in my last episode I did when I was talking with Olivia, and she was breaking down and we were discussing some of the elements that make historical romance what we love. God, now I can't remember what words it was that she was using to describe, but it was something about like earned intimacy or something like that. And we were referencing in Pride and Prejudice the Darcy hand flex, right? And it's like, that image says so much in a way that I don't know if I could actually describe with words in a book. Like, it works
Yeah.
differently in that visual medium.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm going off on a total
No,
tangent
but it's
now.
like the jaw flex. It's
Yeah.
hard to describe, but you know when you see
Yeah.
it on TV.
You know it. Yeah. But all that to say, I love that you did your serial book and that it was more than just the story though, because you did include more kind of in your Hadley's ladies book,
Yes.
which I just love so much.
And I had a lot of fun, with the voice of it. So Godey's Ladies book always speaks in, like, this royal we, and they're very sassy. They're mean sometimes. Their literary notices are devastating. I included some of them because they were so funny, but, like, I enjoyed using that voice, and,
Mhm.
like and the sort of
That's fun.
elaborate mid-19th century compound
Yeah.
sentences. Like, the well of our gratitude is so deep as to be bottomless. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, but there's no bottom. I'm like, oh, this metaphor is getting out of control.
It's so funny. It's so easy to fall into that royal we. Like, I've noticed that lately. So this past week, I just announced, I guess, that I'm trying to start this publishing company
Yes,
because
congratulations!
I've been saying, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, Besotted Books. Tune into that. But it's so funny as I've been sharing about it and creating like social media posts and writing copy for the website and all this stuff. Like, I keep saying we as I talk about, because like to me it's like this broad vision of like this company, and I'm saying we strive for this and we're hoping to do this. Well, it's really me.
It's you.
It's me. It's not,
For
I
now.
mean, there's other people that are going to be involved in this endeavor because obviously I need writers, I need editors, I need people to help. But right now, it's me. It's a singular. But sometimes I just find, sometimes I say I'm excited about, and other times I'm like, we're hoping to.
Yeah. But I don't know, you're
It's
like,
just a
you're
hot
writing
mess.
for the thing, you're,
Mhm.
dressing for the job you want, right? You're
There you
you're
go. Yeah.
you're manifesting a staff.
I'm manifesting a staff. Well, they're all lined up ready to go. We just need funding. So people,
Yes. Oh my
help me
gosh.
make this
This is,
happen.
I would be far more likely to put my money towards a publishing group that's going to bring new stories and authors with integrity, and really like deeply support the historical romance genre way more than I want like sprayed edges and like, whatever, custom whatever
You're so sweet.
of the same
You're
book I
so
already
sweet.
own. I'm all good.
I know. I love that that is happening. I love
Yeah.
that we have groups and people who are saying historical romance matters too, and we need to have these special treats as well, and we need to celebrate what we have. I love that. I want to uplift that. But that's not necessarily doing anything to move the genre forward,
Hmm.
which is what I'm trying to do. And part of the reason that I love your books and wanted to talk to you today to bring it back around, because
Now
this is not about me,
is now.
but I love your books. And it's funny because I keep talking as I'm explaining what I want to do with Besotted is, I keep talking about how expanding the genre, and don't get me wrong, people, we're still going to publish Regency and Victorian because they are the heart of the genre and they still, but it can be so much more than that. And the fact that people debate whether or not your books fit historical romance, like, from my perspective, and as a publisher, I'm going to say, yes, they do. And if I have books like this, I will happily publish them.
Yes.
But I think what you do is very unique and fun and special. And I want more people to read your books.
We can talk about things that, or talk about time periods that were hard,
Mhm.
or
Yes.
events that were controversial, or
Yeah.
we can talk about those things and also have fun,
Yeah.
right? Like joy and, like revolution can go together. In fact, joy
Yeah.
fuels revolution. So let's talk about it all. And it doesn't have to be a
Mhm.
big downer to talk about
Mhm.
things like the really horribly oppressive, like the 1950s was really horribly oppressive for queer people, but they still found spaces to have joy, and they still found
Yes.
ways to find themselves and each other. And I think that, I don't know, it's important to talk about that. And it is realistic. It is accurate and
Mhm.
realistic for people to feel joy and also oppression at the same time. Those things
Mhm.
aren't
Yeah.
mutually exclusive from each other.
Which is part of the reason why I'm encouraging people, and I encourage myself to keep writing, even though things are difficult right now in America where we are living. I mean, they're difficult around the world right now, don't get me wrong, but just struggling with our current administration and things that are happening. But I mean, it was really the very week that we did Romance from Minnesota, I had a book coming out, and it was so weird to talk about and promote my book in the midst of just these horrible things happening. And it was like how it just felt so disconnected and weird. But then I was like, no, we still need joy. And I
Yeah.
that's why I write. I'm all about bringing the joy. But I really love that you're, but one of the other kind of episodes I've had on here, I talked with our lovely headmistresses of Romance Landia
Oh
University.
yeah.
So I talked to them about their new session and why they do what they do. And I think that it's just so much fun. RU is great. And I know that you just did a lecture with
I
them.
did.
So everyone should go. I don't know if it's up on YouTube. Do you know if it's up on
Yeah,
YouTube
I
yet?
think
I'll
it
link
is.
to it. It
I
is.
don't know.
I think it is. So I'll link to it in our show notes. But you were talking about, just some of that joy and some of these
Yeah, I
aspects.
think that, like, especially as a reader, I think what romance can do that is
Mhm.
really nice is that, like, when we enter into a romance story, we know, like, it's gonna have a happy ending. Things are gonna
Yes.
be resolved, and that doesn't mean that the entire world will be just and beautiful and everything will be perfect, but it
Right.
means that, the characters who are falling in love will, find a way to be together and maybe grow together and, kind of reach a new level of self-actualization, perhaps. Yeah. That's what makes it
They'll find a
satisfying.
little pocket of
Right,
happiness.
and happiness can exist in so many contexts, and what
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
I was really hungry for during Operation Metro Surge when we were really just in this kind of fear police state situation.
Mm.
I wish I like, is that exaggerating? I'm like, "It's not exaggerating at all, actually." Gross. I don't know. I feel some kind of
It
way
was
about that.
terrible.
What was
Yeah.
really important was to read something that wasn't ignoring that. I didn't wanna numb
Mhm.
that, right? Because
Yeah.
numbing doesn't really help. What I wanted to do is read something that helped me process that, right?
Yeah.
Where the
Mhm.
characters were also experiencing sort of analogous challenges in their lives, the book After Hours at Dooryard Books, by Cat Sebastian was the book
Mhm.
that I read
Yeah.
during that time, and
Oh,
it
that's
was really
Sebastian.
soothing to be able to,
Mhm.
like, to read about characters who were experiencing some of the same frustration and helplessness
Mhm.
that I was feeling, and then also finding support in their community, finding love,
Yeah.
finding pockets of joy that they could have without having to, justice wasn't a prerequisite for joy. It was the fuel
Right.
that charged the ability to continue to resist. And that was really powerful for me to be able to read during that time.
I love that. I love Cat Sebastian, but she's so great. But yeah, your books have really been embraced by the community that participate in Romancelandia University. I see, just kind of the reviews of your books all the time, and I love that for you.
Well, they're so wonderful.
So much fun. It's so much fun. It's great. I love that they do that. I think seeing characters. I love a good rom-com where things are happy and you're still gonna have conflict because you have to have conflict in a book.
Do
But
you?
well,
What if there wasn't conflict?
you
What
can
if it's
have
just
books
nice
where there isn't.
the whole way?
You can have books where there isn't. It's true. I would argue to make it more enjoyable, there needs to be some element of conflict.
I mean, yeah.
It doesn't have to be crazy, like bonkers high stakes. We're getting kidnapped by
Mm,
pirates. We love those,
mm.
but it doesn't have to be that. But I think, I don't know, as someone who writes, my stakes and conflict are usually a little bit more internal, more
Yeah,
based on this affects the characters, but maybe not anyone outside them. So it doesn't feel as high stakes, but it's still very high stakes for
yeah.
them. But I think seeing characters, reading characters who are also able to thrive through these circumstances, I think that can be bolstering for
I
us.
think so, and I think that it gives me courage to read about people who are doing the hard work of continuously trying to understand themselves more deeply, and
Yes.
continuously trying to, connect with others and
Mhm.
build community in ways that are really challenging and difficult, resisting things that feel just astronomically way too big to ever make an impact on. I think I find reading about characters like that helps me feel like gives me strength in a way that I think we need right now. And I don't
Yeah.
know. I just am really grateful that we were able to do that project together, Andy, and do that fundraiser because
Me too.
without that, I know so many people who were just sitting and watching and they didn't really feel like they could do anything. And I feel like,
Yeah.
me and you and Louise felt like that. And we were like, well, let's just do this
Mhm.
fundraiser and see what happens. And so many other people felt the same way. And with
Yes.
very little effort from us, we were able to
Yeah.
mobilize our community to make a really big difference. And I'm really proud
Yeah.
of us. And that made me feel, I didn't fix the problem. Like, none of us fixed the
No.
problem. But we
No,
were
but
able to route resources from people who cared about the problem to people who were helping
yeah.
address that solution. And I've gotten emails from like the Immigrant Law Center where they're like, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
thanks." Not specifically to me, but just anybody who
Right.
donated, "Thanks.
Right.
You were able to
Right.
do this, 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 and this, and this with your money, and we're
Yeah.
really excited and proud. So thank you. Give us more money." Right?
Yeah.
But I'm really grateful we were able to do that together. And I think
Yeah.
it's amazing what a group of people can do together when they all decide to pull in the same direction.
Yes. Very much
We have
so.
a lot more power than we think we do.
We do. We do. And I think that overwhelmingly the community of romance readers really cares. And that was shown. We said, this is what we're doing. This is why. And so we had people start donating right away. But then the other pieces we appealed to authors to say, like, what can you donate that people then can be entered to win? And we were so overwhelmed. We were like inundated. Like we had planned to collect stuff for 6 days or something. We had to shut it down because we did not we're like, "This is too much. We're overwhelmed." We shut it down after, like, a day, seriously. And then we kept having authors contact us and say, "What else can I do? I missed before you cut it off, and I still wanna donate." And so, if you weren't able to donate, but you wanted to, thank you, we appreciate you. But it was truly overwhelming, like, how much people wanted to pitch in and help.
We raised so much money, like
Yeah,
totally blown away at how much money we raised. And
I know.
every person who donated got a prize. Every
Yes.
single one. It
Because
wasn't
we
a
were so
raffle.
overwhelmed with the generosity, yeah, of
It was
authors.
just
Yeah.
reciprocity. It was beautiful.
It was amazing. It was gorgeous. Anyways, not to go off on that, but I mean, it's past, but it was wonderful. And we were so impressed with the community. And people are wonderful. And yes, when we pull together, we can do incredible things.
Mhm.
But well, Jane, I could talk to you
I
forever,
know, I
but we
could
have been
too.
talking for over an hour now. So I will let you go. Some housekeeping stuff real quick before we end this. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd appreciate if you would share about it, follow where you listen, like episodes, all of that helps in terms of getting noticed, which I appreciate. It helps a lot. And as I mentioned, and we talked about, I am trying to start a small publishing company that's focused on historical romance because we love it. So I'll put all the information linked below, but follow Besotted Books. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter to try to get this funded so it can become a reality in June. So right now, we're just sharing information about what this is about and trying to get people on board so that we can raise enough money. All information on that is coming, and I hope you will follow and support that because if you're listening to this podcast, that means you enjoy historical romance. Jane, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, I could keep talking forever, but everyone should go read Jane's books. I will have linked in show notes and on the episode where you can go to find out about and get all of Jane's books. I'm going to follow up with Jane. I want to get a link to the book that inspired Mr. Milner, that memoir, and I'll put a link to that as well. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It was my
And
pleasure. I always
oh,
love
so
talking to
fun.
you.
I know. I love talking to you too, Jane. All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. Happy reading, and we'll see you again next time.